created a space where we can celebrate the unsung and the undervalued. A place where we focus on the many talents and influences from women within the culture. It hopes to inspire women everywhere to overcome adversity in a male-dominated world. Welcome to Women in Hip Hop. What's up, everybody? It's your girl, Jazzie Belle, here with Women in Hip Hop Podcast, and I am joined by a special guest today. She's going to be flipping the script on me. You know, she's going to be interviewing me. Her name is DJ Likwuid. You know, she's doing her DJ thing, and she's also part of my podcast partners over at Double Elvis, so I'm very excited to be speaking with her today. How are you, DJ Likwuid?
I'm doing well, Jazzie Belle. Thanks for having me. I've been excited about this all week. I'm a fan of yours as a DJ. I love the content that you put out for women in hip hop, and I'm excited to be a part of your team. Wearing my other hat as marketing director over at Double Elvis, we needed this content, and we want you to keep pushing and shining and doing what you do, girl. So I'm excited to flip the mic around today. So I can ask you some questions for a change. So let's just jump right into it. So before I go into just the regular questions, Jazzie Belle, I'm immediately thinking you must be a big Outkast fan.
So, everybody says that. Yep. But
the Love Below or Speaker Box? Which one?
Ooh, that's a good question. I'm a Love Below.
Okay, I hear that. Prototype. Oh yeah. I feel you. Mm-hmm. I feel you. Yeah, I'm a huge Outkast fan. So like automatically, I was drawn to the podcast when I saw the host Jazzie Belle. I was like, oh, she must love some Outkast too. ATL is my favorite albums.
Although I didn't get my name from there, people think that I do. But if I really had to pick an Outkast album, it would be the first one. Southern Playalistic, Cadillac, funky music. Like, yes. Yeah, I'm a OG girl. But of course, I love Outkast.
Did you know that Players Ball was a Christmas song? It's a Christmas song. That's one of the small little known facts of Southern Playalistic.
I didn't know that. Mm-hmm. That's a good hip hop fun fact.
That's a hip hop fun fact for sure. For sure. All right, girl, let's jump into it. All right, so episode 39, I was listening to your interview with April Walker, and y'all had a discussion about finding your tribe and your New York journey. So tell us about your Women in Hip Hop tribe, and also tell us about your journey from Detroit to New York to where you are now.
All right, it's a loaded question. Let's do it. Well, I'll start with the second half of your question. As far as my journey from Detroit to New York, started off very, very young. I'm still shocked that I left the house at 19 years old. I think about that and I'm like, will I do that again? Hell yeah, I would. But I probably will be a bit more humble because I don't know. I thought I had it all figured out. Initially, I wanted to be a rapper myself. A few people probably don't know that, but that's where my love of hip hop came from. And that's why I started this podcast. But at 19, me and my best friend moved to New York in hopes of trying to be the next Salt and Pepper.
I love that.
Because we felt like it was a void, you know, in the industry when it came to female groups. So shout out to the City Girls because I think they're doing an amazing job.
Oh, yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And so, you know, moving to New York at 19 with $5,000 in my pocket, I thought I was rich. I thought I was popping. I thought I was lit. After maybe 3 months, New York will humble you and realize $5,000 is more like $5. And so I got broke really quick. My hip hop dreams I put on hold because I just had to get a 9 to 5. I had to survive, you know, in New York. Yeah. And during that time, unfortunately, me and my partner in rhyme and my best friend departed ways, and she went back to New York and she went back to Detroit. I ended up staying in New York and I just tried to find a way to stay within the culture, within the industry. Yeah. And then I got into radio and I started working at Shade 45, Sirius XM, co-hosting there, did that for about 4 years. And during that time while I was interviewing these artists, predominantly male hip hop artists, I would ask them, you know, of course, like, what's your top 5 dead or alive? You know, we have to ask that question. Mm-hmm. And 9 times out of 10, there will rarely be a female mentioned. And I was like, you know what, that's weird because my top 5 consists of damn near all females, you know? Right. And so I knew then that there was a void that in media that didn't really focus and represent for the women in hip hop and tell their stories and tell, you know, how they came about, like what I'm telling you about me, and just focusing on their talents. And so Women in Hip Hop Podcast was born. And ever since 2017, we've been lit.
I love that. I love that. I mean, you bring up a good point. Hip hop has always been a male dominated industry, but the voices of women have like echoed throughout that history / herstory, you know. And for you to, I read this on your website, that you wanted to amplify voices of Black women, and you put it, and you want girls to be self-sufficient and confident through the lens of hip hop. Just break that down a little bit more for us.
Right. Good question. Yeah, because, you know, you have some girls and women out there that's probably not a fan of hip hop like I am, you know, whether they didn't grow up in it or it just wasn't, they didn't take a liking to the culture. But what I try to enforce and promote to women out there, I say, you know, just listen to these women's stories. You know, when I interview these women, like you mentioned earlier, April Walker, who is, you know, an icon in fashion, but in hip hop fashion. And when you listen to their coming of age story, then you realize that you guys have more in common than you think. Hip hop is just the backdrop to their story, but their story is their story. You know, they're a woman just like you. I don't care if you're a doctor, if you're a lawyer, police officer, or whatever. You know what it's like being in a world where they call this is a man's world. You know what it's like to being treated as if you're not equal because you're a woman. You know what it's like being considered second class because men are considered smarter or better. They get higher pay than you and you're doing just same amount of work.
You better talk about it.
You know, that they do. So I say listen to the podcast and listen to the lyrics and listen to their stories and understand that you guys have more in common. You guys will be more self-sufficient because that's what they promote. And they promote leadership, and they promote, you know, being fearless and being authentic. And that's what I want every woman out there, regardless of your background, to know that you can do that too.
And correct me if I'm wrong. The thing that I loved about April Walker, and I didn't know that, like for her to be someone to work with not one but two legendary icons, Biggie and Pac, and to like have that personal relationship. And then with her going into launching Walker Wear, was it true that she had to keep herself behind? She didn't like forthright come out and say this is my brand type thing because she was worried about backlash for her being a woman fashion business owner. Like it blew my mind, you know.
She was worried about not being taken seriously. She was worried about not being respected. Although the people that knew, like the Tupacs and the Biggies and the EPMDs and the Run DMCs of the world, all of these men knew, but she didn't want to promote it to avoid being looked down upon, to avoid being treated as anything other than how she should be treated, and that's with respect. And that was strategic on her part, and I totally understand. And eventually, you know, now that she's in the forefront, I think that's inspiring in itself, because just because you start off one way doesn't mean you have to end that way.
Yep.
Yeah, and sometimes in this industry, it's chess, not checkers. And I think she was smart with doing that. It's just unfortunate that she had to.
Yeah. Speaking of having space for these women to tell their stories, Sha Rock, she was feeling some tea, girl.
She's so
I wasn't
lovely.
ready. I was not ready.
You saw my facial expressions and some of the
I was
stuff
like,
she said. I was like,
listen, but I love the realness of it. So, I mean, hearing stories like Sha Rock, right? So, and, you know, she's recognized as the first female MC. So, I mean, like, it's literally the pioneers till now. With all the women that you've interviewed, like how similar are their stories, regardless of the decades, right? From 73 to now, 78 till now. Yeah.
How are their stories similar?
How are their stories similar? How are they different? I mean, like, how much has the industry changed or stayed the same when it comes to women MCs?
Yeah, you know, it's similar because at the end of the day, they're all women and they're all trying to fight for their voices to be heard. That is still prevalent. That is still what's happening today. What I do feel is different is that, of course, especially when we're talking about the mother of rap and being the first to ever do it. You know, it's definitely harder for her. A lot is on her shoulders. And, you know, she didn't have social media back then. She didn't have millions of followers. So she was hitting the pavement, old school style, getting herself heard on her own merit without a manager, without any of the glitz and the glamours behind it. And I feel like now everything is so much about instant gratification and social media and the boobs, the breasts, the clothes, the cars, the Rolex. You know, it's just all about materialism, and talent. But I just think back then it was all about your hustle. It was all about your grind. It was all about you fighting, in a sense of like in the midst of the jungle, really getting dirty, like really
getting out there,
getting it in. Yeah, like that's hard. I remember back in the 90s and even the early 2000s when I moved to New York, you know, when they had a street team, when people would put out posters and you would see these kids on the freeway putting up posters on the FDR, on the West Side Highway. And I'm like, wow, they, you know, really getting it in the wintertime, you know, really doing it. Like, they don't need that no more. You could just post a picture on Instagram and it reaches millions of people all at once. So that's the difference. But one thing that I think will never be taken away is that these women are fighting in a male-dominated industry to be heard, to be respected, to be loved, and to showcase their talents, because all of these women are talented in their own right.
I love that breakdown. It actually made me think about radio and podcasting as well.
Okay.
And you, as someone who you've been on the radio, you have your podcast, you're in various forms of media. For indie artists, especially women indie artists, like how, I guess today, how difficult or easy is it to take up those spaces? Because when you were talking about street teams, I immediately thought about gatekeepers, like who can afford a street team today, right? Radio, the gatekeeper used to be the music director to some degree. In New York, I feel like it's, I won't say there was a little more freedom because New York radio DJs, mix shows would have so much freedom for them to play whatever, right? You know, but then the internet came along and you can have your song on Spotify through DistroKid in 24 hours. So you're right there on the same platform as other folks. So, you know, when I think about women in hip hop podcasts, I'm like, wow, this is something that's needed. And someone like you can give that space because of your past, your accolades. You've been on the radio, so you've done all of these different things. So if you say, hey, check this person out, they're hot, people are going to do that. Like, people are going to want to know who this person is. So when you think about that from an indie artist, especially for women indie artists, like how difficult or easy, because maybe I'm just bugging, how difficult or easy is that now for women indie artists as opposed to male indie artists to be able to get in those spaces?
I mean, I think it's equally as easy. And I put that like quote unquote easy because it's still all about the effort that you put out, right? But overall, I think it's easier in comparison to, like I said, back in the day, because you have these platforms like a Woman in Hip Hop podcast that was created by me, you know? So the gatekeepers from back in the day, I feel like was in the way for a lot of the artists to be heard, you know? Whether it be because they was hating, maybe they didn't like you, you know, maybe you just wasn't their cup of tea. But you have a demographic out there that wants to hear, you know, a Soulja Boy, or wants to hear a Kendrick Lamar, or wants to hear, you know, a Chica, you know, and, you know, you could love an artist like a Chica and her not have to worry about getting the thumbs up from some of these gatekeepers from back in the day that really just focus on your appearance. You know what I mean? So thank God for platforms like, you know, SoundCloud or social media, even, or podcasts, people like that's creating podcasts like myself, for people to go out there and be heard and to be seen, because that's what's really about. And I think at this point, there's no room for you to feel like you're still being pigeonholed, because there's so many opportunities out there. it's just really up to your hustle and what you really feel like, what you put into it. Don't be lazy. Don't be complacent. Go out there and get it, because
Go
it
and
could get
get
done.
it.
It could get
Yeah.
done at this point. It could get
This
done.
this makes for a great segue, actually, because I want to talk about the interview that you had with Rhapsody.
Okay.
So you had a conversation with Rhapsody about colorism and the concept of beauty in the entertainment industry. You know, and it was a wonderful conversation. I mean, both of you were speaking to points and experiences that I think, like, every Black girl at some point has felt that, or has been come in contact with someone discussing our appearance when it has nothing to do with our talent, expertise, or ability to take up space. So, I mean, from then to now, okay, so we're going to fast forward to today. I heard those same standards of beauty, of what someone should look like, or what it takes for a woman to sell records, to go platinum, multi-platinum, diamond. 1994, the Brat drops Funkified, and she becomes the first woman MC to go platinum. And we all remember, you know, the Brat had the tomboy look. She was, you know, not the traditional standard of what beauty was sold to us to appear to be. So now fast forward today, you do have artists like Tierra Whack, Young M.A., Oprah, Rhapsody, who redefine that definition of beauty, or what beauty concept should be it masculine or feminine. So do you think that times have changed as far as how women can exist in the hip hop world, or do you feel like, you know, it's just covert now?
No, I mean, yeah, times has definitely changed. And I love that you brought up the Brat, because the next episode of Women in Hip Hop focuses on the career, impact, and influence of the Brat.
Love that.
And I speak about the Brat so highly because she was the first female rapper to have an influence on me in my life. Seeing her, I just felt like she mirrored how I look at that time. Before it was the heels, before it was the hair and the makeup.
What?
I was totally a carbon copy of the Brat. But even before she came out, that's how I looked. That's what happened. You know, that's what happens when you have Southern brothers, you know.
Yeah, yeah.
And it was just one of those things where seeing the Brat really was important, even though she couldn't fully be herself. And she talks about that now, you know. So of course things has changed, because back then, you know, she knew that as far as her sexuality and liking girls, but she said in an interview recently that in the 90s being gay wasn't popular, so that was something that she shied away from. So now she's living in her truth, and you know,
good for
30
her.
years later, and you know, I'm just as much as a fan now as I was then. But when you bring up a person like Young M.A. or Chica, who I mentioned earlier, who's open with their sexuality, you see the shift there. You see the growth in that aspect, right? Because a Young M.A., like the Brat said, wasn't popular back then. But here she is now, selling records, having, you know, dope songs that's like #1, you know, in the country, and this, you know, and making all of these noise and all of this impact that these women have now, just being themselves and people not focusing so much on their beauty. However, with that being said, although we are coming a long way, there's still some ways to go, because you know, to the Tierra Whacks of the world and the ones that you're mentioning, they are super talented, and yes, they are getting the recognition that they deserve, because you got someone like Rhapsody that's nominated for Grammys and stuff like that. But when you think of like mainstream, and when you think about the promotion that some of these girls get, I do see more of a focus on, you know, the Dream Dolls or the Cardi B's or Megan Thee Stallion, and all of these girls, you know, are talented in their own right. But I don't see their names getting mentioned as much as I would like to within the same context, like, or within the same conversations. It's almost like it's separate worlds in women in hip hop. You know, it's like, and you know, maybe that's something that happens in hip hop when it comes to men too. I don't know. I don't think so, because you know, you got your conscious rappers. People will say, shout out to Common or Talib Kweli, and you know, all of these people. And then it's like, you got the more commercialized rappers, and I'm just speaking more of the 90s because I love my 90s hip hop. Like, it's, you know, the Jay-Z, right? The Jay-Z and the Nas and the Nellies, you know, those are more the popular ones. But I feel like when I ask people their top fives, you can get a more diverse list of what that looks like. I don't know if that exists when it comes to women in hip hop. I feel like you would get Foxy, Kim, and and them, and then you would really like. I feel like I have a great top five. Foxy,
what's your top five?
Kim, well, Kim, Foxy, Eve, Lauryn Hill, and Left Eye.
Those are good. That's a solid
the Brat,
list.
I feel like she deserves to be in there, and that's what she stuck around.
Honorary 6.
She's my honorary 6. And then you got Missy Elliott, Queen Latifah. You know what I mean? So you got one person like Queen Latifah is all about Queen. I don't even think she probably put calling girls bitches in her songs, but you got Kim and Foxy, who's my faves, and this bitch all day. But I have a very much appreciation for them all. I just wish that the kids now can appreciate a Nicki Minaj and can also appreciate a Tierra Whack in the same breath. That's just something I would love to see more of.
Say it louder for the people in the back.
Yes, you can appreciate Nicki Minaj.
You can love both.
And appreciate a Tierra Whack is, in the same breath. I just think what's happening is that their taste of music isn't as diverse, and that's probably because the promotion isn't there, the information isn't put in their face as much, and I would like to see that.
Yeah, I love that. Totally agree with 110%. Shifting gears a little bit, tell me about your book, 48 Bars of Power.
48 Bars of Power. I know everybody's like, you keep talking about this book, when is it coming out?
I need to know. I need to know.
I'm working on it because I want to just, put it out there. And for the people that really know me, like when I have my heart set on something, like this podcast, like anything else I've ever done, I just put it out there. I'm not focusing on, if it's perfect or, if this person is behind me or not. I just follow where my heart goes, where my passion lies. One thing about this book, though, that has me holding back from putting it out there is now I have people that's interested in the book. I'm talking to a publisher right now. And so it's just, okay. So it's like,
yes, ma'am.
We have to evolve. We have to step up. So it's coming eventually. But one thing I can say about the book, if I could just break down, I guess, like the synopsis or the premise of the book, is 48 Bars of Power. Of course, it's a play off 48 Laws of Power, but bars, it represents women in hip hop. It represents the female rappers as 48 of my favorite bars from my favorite rappers. And what it does, I break it down in 3 chapters. So one chapter is about love and relationships, and you get 16 bars that focuses on that. And you get 16 bars that focuses on self-esteem and confidence, and you get 16 bars that focuses on faith and spirituality. And those were some of the things, me growing up, that I felt like I struggled with, and I looked to these women in hip hop to help me navigate those spaces. So for instance, love and relationships, unfortunately, I dealt with domestic violence. So when I heard a song like Love is Blind, it helped me realize my worth. It helped me realize I can get out of it, or I should get out of it before it's too late. Okay. And so stuff like that is where I can promote those songs, give a bar, and give a personal story of how that bar affected me. So each bar comes with a story, personal story for me on how they helped shape my life. So 48 Bars of Power, and you get 48 stories.
I can't wait sending you love and healing for your experiences, but also giving you flowers for your bravery and share. I can't wait for the book. So keep those talks going. Get that coin.
Yes. Yes.
Okay.
Yes, it's coming.
Reparationship is the best allyship. Y'all hold on to that on period.
Reparationship is the best allyship.
Okay. And that's what it is. We can get into that another time, but yeah, I love that. I'm excited for your book. So congrats. Speaking of bars, hip hop, everyone knows the 4 elements of hip hop. What's your honorary 5th element? Because it's always different. I ask this question to everyone.
Really?
Yes.
Okay.
I won't say what other people have said until after you say your honorary 5th, but I'm curious to know.
Let's break down the 4.
Let's break down the 4.
So the 4, okay, so we got
the obvious one,
obviously MCing,
right,
rapping, right?
Gotta have a
Break
DJ.
dancing, DJ.
Yep.
Come on,
DJ.
DJ. So that's 3.
Breaking, right? And then last but not least, graffiti.
Graffiti.
Yep.
Graffiti, and that's the one that I always have to remind people of. Even myself, I was like, graffiti.
Oh yeah, yeah,
yeah,
yeah.
Because I used to be real close to a graffiti artist. They used to always have to remind me, I'm part of the fourth.
I'm part of the culture. Please don't leave them out. Star Wars, Star Wars. But yeah, please don't leave them out, girl.
Exactly. Okay, so if I was to give a fashion.
That's okay. Yeah. So those are, I always hear fashion. The old school heads, 99.999% will say knowledge. You got to have the knowledge. That's the honorary 5th. Yeah. And then beatboxing, people will say sometimes is the honorary 5th. Which I get that. I feel like that could be an honorary. But yeah, fashion is another one.
I feel like I read somewhere that beatboxing is actually part of it. I feel like certain things kind of like fluctuate.
Overlap.
Like, right? Mm-hmm. But it gotta be fashion for me because I felt like as a kid growing up in hip hop, I always mirrored hip hop. Like I always with my fashion. Yeah. And I feel like that's what the fashion industry does, period. You know, they mirror hip hop. So absolutely. I feel like fashion and hip hop is one and the same. You know, so when you look at
it's part of the culture.
Yeah, it has to be the hat to the back, the saggy jeans from back then, or even before then, the gold chains, and now the Kangos back then. So now where we are, it's like we're looking to see what hip hop is doing, and fashion houses like Gucci, okay, are mimicking what we did in the streets. And shout out to Dapper Dan.
Dapper Dan. I'm so glad Dapper Dan's getting his flowers.
Yeah, you know what I mean? And that goes to show why fashion should always be, or should be, the 5th element.
All right, 5th element, fashion. Yeah. So tell me, where is the Jazzie Belle and women in hip hop brand in the next 10 to 15 years? Ooh. I was waiting for it. It's like, when's she gonna do her sound?
Right? Okay, I'm glad. Yes, come on. You already know. 10, 15 years. You know, I like to live in the now. Okay. But I feel like my now will represent, you know, a smidgen of what 10 to 15 years do. I guess it's just whatever I'm doing now is going to catapult whatever's going to happen in 10 to 15 years. But I always saw Women in Hip Hop podcast being a TV show. I always saw it, but that's something now, right? But I mean, you know, who's to say that it can't still happen in 10 to 15 years? It's kind of like The View. You see what's going on with the longevity of that. I would love to have a Woman in Hip Hop version of that. You have people like us within the culture that can discuss what's happening in the world, but from a woman in hip hop perspective, just coming from us in the culture. I see that. I see film. I see me doing stuff in the film industry as far as telling stories and documentaries and films that's in relation to women in hip hop. Yeah. Because it's funny, you know, I've been part of panels, I've been a part of documentaries, I've been a part of specials like on E! True Hollywood.
The E! True Hollywood, I was gonna ask about that. Yeah.
When they had the whole evolution of women in hip hop, and you know, people were angry. They didn't talk about this. How they just gonna skim over Little Kim? How they didn't even focus on, you know, this person, that person? I was like, bro, it was a freaking 40-minute special, like, you know. Yeah. But they're right, you know, and I want to be that platform to show and to get more in depth and tell these women's stories as it pertains to women in hip hop, and really go in, like, why wasn't Foxy Brown mentioned? You know, that's something I don't understand myself, and I understand why her fans are outraged, and I am too, because I'm a fan. And
I know you're a big Foxy Brown fan.
like huge. And to think that a lot of her contributions and her talents aren't being recognized is beyond
crazy. Me, her verse on affirmative action, was it The Firm? hands down, one of the best verses ever, period. Not by a man or woman, just one of the best verses ever.
Yeah, like even with her introduction to the world with I Shot Ya back in like
Yeah.
1985 with everybody on that record. You know, she killed that to the point that I believe LL Cool J had to go back in and do his verse over. You
And
know? Yeah. So anybody can get it. Female too, boo or something. I don't give a boo. Like you know what I mean? So it's like Foxy, even to be co-signed by like the likes of Jay-Z, you know, and him being the biggest
and Nas
male artist, and Nas, you know,
and
AZ, and Corona. Like, you know,
these are like the biggest rappers back then, you know, even, I mean, till now, arguably, but you're absolutely right to get co-signed by two legends, or how we regard them as legendary for their skill. She should be getting more accolades than she does currently. Like, you know, she should definitely be mentioned in people's top. So I love the fact, I'm like, you bring up Foxy a lot, because even in your conversation with Hood Celebrity, I was talking about Foxy a bit and how she would switch up her rapping sometimes. But yeah, I totally agree with that. Hands down.
Opened me up, a young Black girl from Detroit in the Midwest, opened me up to different cultures. I didn't know nothing about what a Trinidadian was, you know. I didn't, you know, and so again, culturally, she's so influential, and the fact that she doesn't get the praise she deserves. I would love 10 to 15 years from now, women in hip hop to be the platform to give women like her flowers, and to do a documentary on a person like her, you know, and the Chiraqs of the world, and Roxanne Shante, and et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. Yeah. I want to be the go-to place for anything inconsistent women in hip hop.
I love that. I mean, you brought up a good point too, because Black is not a monolith. Like, hip hop can be a cultural lens for the Black experience globally too. So I love that you brought that up as well. This is leading into one of my last couple of questions. I only got a couple more for you. Not gonna hold you too long. I know you're a busy woman.
Let's do it. My time is all good.
So in leading into that, I saw your feature with Samsung, which was amazing. But you said that creating is your lifeline. So in another lifetime, if Jazzie Belle isn't hosting, content, creating, media mogul, your current lane now, in another lifetime, how would Jazzie Belle be creating?
How would I be creating? Creating is definitely my lifeline, though. So I would definitely still be creating. And I just, you know, just even to be on that, because with creating, why I feel like it's my lifeline, because I always feel alive. Like right now, I feel alive doing this with you, you know, creating, and whether it's an interview, whether it's writing my book, I just feel alive. And there's times where I feel like when I'm just chilling and I'm not being as productive, I find myself just, I don't know, I hate to use the word depressed, but I just don't feel alive, you know. And the way for me to really get out of it is when I'm doing what I love. So I just remember, it just hit me when you said that, like, creating is my lifeline. So that's actually what I mean by that, because I just like what I do. I love what I do. I like to work. I like, and I have to be consistent in that, because it just thrives me. It feels as almost like it fulfills a void, or like it sparks something in me, like a fire, right? And if this flame blows out, then it's just kind of like, wait, I need to create something because I feel bored, or I don't feel good, you know. And that's just something that I don't know if it's good or bad, but
it's good. Keep shining, keep the fire burning.
So I just love to create. I mean, even after this interview, I got because I know that I'm going to be in the zone of creating. So I already have something else lined up for me to do, because this is what I love. But I love children so much, and I just feel like I would be creating something for children to do, to keep them motivated, to keep them happy, to keep them creative. Because I just feel like the children is our future. So
I heard that somewhere before.
Oh, maybe by this beautiful woman named Whitney Houston. Right. My favorite artist. But no, I just really want, you know what? And you know, that's something that I would probably end up doing, like a nonprofit or something. I don't know, but I would love to create something. I could see, I would love to create something for like women and children to feel safe, and to have a place where they can feel like they're safe, they can escape here, they can create and know that they're good here. So that's something I would love to do, whether it's creating educational programs for women and children, but in that space, something within that space.
I love that. Yeah, you use the word space a lot, and I feel like I have this quote where I just always say I believe in the Black femme future, and I think you are a part of that future. You are doing it now in the present, and I'm a huge fan of Afrofuturism, and it's a metaphor to some degree, right, for taking up space. Like, yeah, we want to shoot into outer space and be great and all of those things, but we want to take up space here on Earth too. And you are someone that not only takes up space, but gives space. So kudos and thank you to you for that. So yes, Black Femme Future, Jazzie Belle. DJ Likwuid said it first. Boom.
I created a space where we can celebrate the unsung and the undervalued. A place where we focus on the many talents and influences from women within the culture. It hopes to inspire women everywhere to overcome adversity in a male-dominated world. Welcome to Women in Hip Hop.